Off the back of a bloody bye week, nothing to do, nothing to see. Great to finally be back into the footy this week. It's the Warriors up against the Dragons over there in Sydney. Let's take a look how this is going to play out. Hey team, welcome back to the Warriorholic. Coming to you live from Tokyo today. My shitty little hotel room here. About 50 metres from a bloody train line behind me over here. So you've got a bit of a train rattle in the background, and luckily the ladies are out there doing the cleaning in the hallway, so you might get a few vacuum cleaners as well. But apologies for the sound, but I want to get this done. So excited to get back into the footy after, you know, a bye round that makes it feel like it's been about a month since we last played. So full disclosure up front, I haven't watched a lot of the Dragons footy this year. They've never really been a team that's excited me that much, but I did go back and watch the round 15 clash against Souths. They're coming off the back of the bye too, so a few insights from what I saw in that game against the Rabbitohs there. A few interesting stats here about both teams to hopefully give you a bit of an idea of what you might be able to expect on the weekend. So obviously we're playing over in Sydney. 34 games so far we've played against them, and this surprised me. They've won 24 and we've only won 10. So they'd have one of the better for and against rates against us over the years in the NRL, which is honestly really surprising. We have won, you know, one of the last two each, so it's a pretty even in recent times. If we have a look here at the last 5 rounds, though, we've had 3 wins versus their 2. But I did a bit of a calculation here. They are 22.4 points on average for and 29.2 against. So they're close to -7 versus ours is 23.6 points for versus 15.6 against, so we're a +8. So recent form shows that, you know, we're in a lot more consistent form. We've definitely got a lot better defense. They've conceded a lot of points on a lot of occasions. You know, we can see there, what, got their 1, 2, 3, 4 games over 25 points, you know, up into the 40s there in their game against the Cowboys. We haven't conceded 40 points this year. I think we're one of the only teams in the whole NRL that haven't conceded that 40-point mark. So it's a real tick to our defence. Looking at the overall win percentage, they're on 29%, 4 from 14, and we're 8 from 14. So from that statistic, we look like we're playing clearly better. But interesting when you look at, you know, all the different statistics across the game, things like line breaks, tackle efficiency and the like. Other than our overall defense record, we're actually both quite similar in all of the major stats. But interestingly there, they've got the worst left edge defense in the whole NRL, which is a great sign for us. And they're 5th worst in overall defense versus we're 2nd best. So, you know, you have to think that defense is going to play a very big factor into this game. Watching how they played against Souths there, they're very expansive. They'll go from one side of the field to the other quite quickly. They'll spread it wide early in tackles. They get Sloan into the back line there as a creative, you know, sort of runner and ball player there, either at first or second receiver, sort of linking with Hunt, which does tend to create a lot of space out wide for them. That said, you know, I think we've got relatively good scrambling defense at the moment. It's probably one of our less effective aspects of our game, so we have to be really aware of that. They score a lot of long-range tries by the look of it, whereas we tend to score our tries, you know, from a little bit closer in, based on a more direct form of footy. They really struggled to contain South's middles at a lot of parts of the game and just let them, you know, get really easy meters up the middle there, which I think we will exploit. Similar to a lot of teams, they use their forwards a lot more in their early hit-ups, whereas we use our backs a lot more. We saw that they really fell apart in the last sort of, 20 minutes against South, particularly in the last 4 minutes. You know, they led in 16 points in the last 4 minutes and almost lost that game when there are something like 36-14 up with 4 to go. So we know we finished strong, so that's another a good chance here, I think, for us. I'll go through the teams in a minute, but looking at some of the other key stats here, you know, look at the average points for and against is 21 for and 25 against for Saints over the whole season. But like I mentioned before, it's been a bit worse over the past 5 rounds. 20 to 18 for us, so we're slightly in the positive there. But over the past 5 rounds on average, we're a lot more. We're 8 points in total in the positives. Similar play of the ball speeds there at 3.5, almost nothing in it. Completion efficiency 76 versus 80. That's, you know, maybe 1 or 2 sets a game, which could make a difference if it's a tight one. Tackle efficiency kind of surprised me here, that with all the points they've conceded, they're still up at 86.7% versus our 88%. So that's a sign that the tackles we're missing aren't necessarily leading to tries, whereas theirs are. Their line defense is not quite as solid as ours. So I think that's the thing, we're missing tackles out wide early on, quite far out, and we're able to scramble, and then once we get onto our line, we're able to maintain our tackle efficiency a lot higher than they are. So, you know, like I said, you'd think from a purely statistical perspective, we should come in this one and waltz home, given that, you know, we're up in the top 8 and they're right down the bottom. But, you know, it will be a lot tighter than we think. A lot of that, though, will come down to how the recent weeks of uncertainty over there at the Dragons play out. You know, losing a coach, not getting their first choice coach, then getting Flanagan. Now they've got their captain saying he wants out and prepared to pay $150,000 to do so right now. You know, he's playing Origin tonight, liable to get bashed up, and, you know, they've got him named to come back and play on Friday night. But would you want that distraction in your team? Would you want a guy who's played, you know, a lot of hooker, made a lot of tackles on a Wednesday night at State of Origin level, coming in there on a Friday? You do often find that guys step up off the back of Origin, but, you know, a lot of that's going to come down to whether he does play, because they're definitely a different team by all accounts when Hunt's not there. So I'm not going to go too far into like little individual matchups and the statistics this week. I just honestly don't have time. But if we have a look at the back lineups here and you know, a few of the key matchups, for me, I think, you know, it starts at the back there with CNK versus Sloan. CNK is a genuine workhorse, you know, taking up to 2 or 3 hit-ups per set, particularly when we're hitting it off our line, up over the 200-metre mark on regular occasion. In the past 2 or 3 weeks, we have seen him really start to become a little bit more of a ball player and get involved in the attack more, which has resulted in him getting tries and try assists, which is great to see. Whereas Sloan is a lot more free, floating fullback, you know, a little bit in the Ponga kind of mould where he pops up in the line at all different times. He doesn't take as many sort of little one-up hit-ups like CNK does, so he's a genuine playmaker, really, you know, speed to burn. So we're going to have to be really careful of him out on our edges, popping up there. So 2 totally different types. I think, you know, we've seen this in recent weeks, but I genuinely back CNK's work rate and effort to kind of lift our guys and probably be a point of difference for us. Yes, I'll give him a slight edge. Fire guy, I don't know how you pronounce that, versus DWZ. I've only seen him play that one game against South. Seemed an efficient enough winger, but nothing hugely amazing. But the work rate we've seen and the effort, the try scoring we've seen from, you know, Dallin over the past few weeks, you're going to have to give that one to him. Moses Sully against Berry. This is going to be really interesting because Sully's, he's got the most post-contact meters. He's got, you know, more tackle breaks than most of our backs, but he's not overly flash on defense up against a young guy who, you know, with his front on D may be a little bit questionable, but he's really good in his legs tackles, which will put, you know, Sully down quite well if he can get those timed right. So I do back Rocco's defense. You know, his combinations on the edge seem quite good. He's a smart footy player, but it's going to be a really, really tough challenge for him this week to step up with that physicality, giving away 15 kg. So, you know, for me, Sully's one of their definite, you know, if he has a game for the ages like he can do. I think he had one against the Roosters back there on Anzac Day where he absolutely carved them up. He could be a real menace for us, but he's a little bit of an up-and-down player. He's mentioned in the past he's not overly happy being at the Dragons. With his captain leaving. What's he like emotionally? I don't know, but just purely on form and ability, you're going to have to give him a slight nudge there. Zach Lomax against Pompey. You know, Lomax has struggled to be in his best form. You know, we know he's a really outstanding attacking fullback at his best, but we haven't really seen that for a couple of seasons now. We haven't seen that offload. We haven't, you know, seen them throwing those crazy passes, which in some cases have been a negative, but he's also created a lot of you know, line break assists there. Up against Pompey has been really, really solid. So I expect Pompey to be able to dominate this this matchup for me. Another interesting one here, we've got Ravalawa up against my man Montoya. I was quite surprised actually that Monty gives away 15 kg to him as well. Monty looks a lot bigger than 95 kg. Well, actually, sorry, it's 10 kg he gives away there. 95 versus 105. You know, you've got two bricks of human beings that like to run over the top of people. But Monty, I rate his defense, and he hasn't really had anyone dominate him physically this year, so I'd imagine he'll be able to handle him quite well. But both got a lot of line breaks, a lot of tries and so forth, so going to be an interesting matchup. I don't think that Ravalawa's got the same amount of fitness that Monty's obviously got, so let's put a lot of traffic at him and try and tire him out. He definitely doesn't do the same amount of work off his line with the head-ups like our wingers do, so it'll be interesting to see how he sort of contributes to the game. Then getting into the halves, this will be interesting actually. You know, I'm going to go based on the assumption that Hunt will play as listed. You've got Jaden Sullivan up against Luke Metcalf, two of the smaller 5'8" in the game at the moment, 80 odd kg versus 85. So for once this season, I think Metcalf is actually the bigger man. He's got more pace. I think Sullivan's a solid enough player, but we've seen progression from Metcalf every week, building that combination with his other ball players, finding how we're using him more effectively. He started to get in close to the ruck and make those breaks using his speed, similar to a Walsh kind of role. So I'd like to see Metcalf really step up and sort of have a defining game here with Tamati Martin back running now. He was meant to be back this week, but by all accounts he'll be back next week. So that's going to make a really interesting choice for Cappy, for Webby. So hopefully Metcalf can step up and make a bit of a statement here. Then we've got Ben Hunt here against SJ. This is a really interesting one, right? I think Ben Hunt is one of those guys that if he does play, he can sort of compartmentalise all the emotional bullshit that'll be going on around in the background. But if it was me, I'm not playing the guy. One, coming off Origin, he's going to be gassed. Two, how do his teammates feel about him coming out and saying, hey, I hate this so much, I want out now and I'm prepared to pay to get out? He's clearly been in discussions with other clubs, because you don't threaten to leave or say you want out without some clear options there. If he plays, he's very similar to SJ. Both got to dominate. They dominate their attack. They get a lot of ball in their hands. They've both got a great pass, great running game, great kicking game. So it'll be an intriguing matchup if he does play. There's no reason for me that SJ can't match him, particularly coming off the break. Again, seeing the progression from him every week, that he's got better and better. So I'd like to think SJ will dominate this by a fraction if Hunt does play. If he doesn't, I honestly don't know the combination they'll go for. So really intriguing to see how that one goes. Now, getting on to the forward pack. So where I think we have got a bit of an opportunity to dominate here is in our middles. Watching the game against the Rabbitohs there, they've got solid props without being anything fantastic. None of their middle forwards are up there in the post-contact meter rankings. Their biggest post-contact meters in the whole team. The only one who ranks in the top 50 is Sully, actually. None of their forwards do. Whereas Adam Fanua-Blake, I think he's about 9th in the league in post-contact meters. So, Molo, I think they're both brothers, I'm guessing, the two Molos there. Both of the Molos, again, they're solid guys. They're kind of like a fit in the middle there between probably a little bit more effective than a guy like Bunty with their running, but definitely not world class like AFB. So I expect AFB to dominate both of them quite easily. Jacob Little, I don't know a huge amount about. Looks efficient enough, doesn't do anything amazing. Probably reminds me of what Egan was like a couple of seasons ago before he really started to find his feet. So given his form recently and his progression, another week off to fix any niggles, I'd like to see Egan dominate that. I want to keep him, getting that running out of dummy half going. We saw the Rabbitohs carve them up a few times here once they got Cook running out of dummy half. So I'd look to see Egan to do that, but hopefully start to link up a little bit with Metcalf off his shoulder if they can get that timing right with Egan making the break and then flicking it off to Metcalf with his pace. There's an opportunity there for long range tries or some serious line breaks here. Blake Lowry up against Bunty. You know, Blake Lowry's a bit of a workhorse. You know, he's one of those guys that took him seasons and seasons to get his first try. You know, he's by no means one of the most intimidating props in the competition, but he is a workhorse. He's got a strong work ethic, plays big minutes. Probably, you know, you'd get more out of him out of an 80-minute game here than we're getting out of Bunty at the moment. We only seem to be seeing, you know, the first 15 or 20 minutes out of him. This week with no Barnett, he may get a few more minutes, but, you know, very, you know, not like for like in exactly their abilities and what they contribute, but much of a muchness probably on how they're going to impact on the game. I don't expect either of them to really stand out and have, you know, a defining impact on what happens at the end of the game. Next up, this matchup, mate, we've got Bird up against Ford. So Bird has had 61 tackle breaks and Ford has 50 missed tackles. So Bird's in the top sort of 15 in tackle breaks and Ford's in the top 15 for missed tackles. So he's going to really have to pull his shit together this weekend, or this Friday night, I should say, to control Bird. We know Bird likes to throw an offload. We know he's a very creative player. We know he's a very emotive player, whereas we've got Ford who just grinds it out and grinds it out. But we really need to tighten his defense and eliminate those errors. He went for a couple of weeks there where he didn't have the errors or give away the penalties, but you know, in our last game before the bye there, he had a couple of really silly errors there over in Canberra that could have cost us. Luckily they didn't. So you know, you'd like to think up against his old club, Ford can step up and really make a statement here. So if he doesn't, it could be a long night for him. Then we've got Jaden Sewer up against Niakordia. You know, Sewer's a solid player. He's probably one of their, you know, again, their edge back rowers and their locks are probably more impactful than their props. So, you know, Sewer's a solid player. He's got a lot of variety in his game, but up against the Niakordia, who's in some really solid form, getting way more involved in these past sort of 3 or 4 games, week by week, bringing that aggression factor to the point he got, you know, the 10 minutes the other day. But I don't mind that. Brings that intimidation factor. So I'd like to count on Niakordia to count his lucky stars. He didn't get suspended. He's able to play this week. We don't have Barnett, so we need someone to sort of step up and add that mongrel to the pack. And I'm hoping Niakordia will do that and dominate Sewer this week. He's a bigger man, definitely taller, so, you know, using those long limbs to sort of get some passes away in contact will be really interesting if he can get that to happen. Jack de Belin against Tohu is an interesting matchup. You know, de Belin's, I struggle to become, you know, to be a fan of him, even though he was found not guilty. But, you know, geez, I don't know. It's hard to know. You know, the court of law, they've got to prove beyond reasonable doubt. But there probably was a lot of reasonable doubt, you could argue there, that sort of, you know, I can't handle those kind of situations. So I won't get into the details. So I used to like him as a player until that happened. I struggle to get behind him anymore. Very different players. Obviously, they both got really high work rates. There was, you know, some talk that de Belin may have even been in the mix for New South Wales this year in Origin. But again, he's more of a workhorse. He's a tackle machine. You know, runs a lot, but he doesn't quite have the same ball playing ability as Tohu. So overall, I expect Tohu to have a bigger impact on the game here. Walker's finally back now, so I don't think we'll see Tohu playing in that distribution role the whole game. I expect when Bunty goes off that Walker comes on and Tohu goes into prop, which I think will sort of, you know, take a bit of the pressure off him. I've liked the fact that the past couple of weeks, not every ball's gone through his hands. I think, you know, it was just interesting listening to some of the talk about what's needed by New South Wales to get up over Queensland is not put so much ball through Yo's hands, getting it straight to the playmakers wider out and giving them more time. I think that's something we've been guilty of at some parts of the season. It's just putting it through Tohu too much. We need to get it past that first, you know, forward receiver straight out to Metcalf or SJ wider out. So hopefully that approach and getting Tohu back into prop in the middle of the game there, you know, frees him up a little bit to focus on what he's doing, gives him a little bit more energy to run rather than having to think about, you know, ball playing all the time. So I'd like to think he's got too much there for de Belin, and we'll get up over that. Then we get on to the interchanges. It's kind of interesting now. What do they got there? They got Amon, who's a 5'8", so maybe he comes in if Hunt doesn't play. Then who comes onto the bench, I'm not sure. Then you've got Molo, who's a prop. You've got Murdoch Masilla, who's really a middle forward, come edge forward. Yeah, great guy, solid, but not the most impactful player in the world at his age. And Zane Musgrove, who's another prop. So you've got a pretty big bench there, other than having a 5'8" on it. Versus ours, you know, we've got that high speed, high impact bench, which again does us great favours getting into that second half. So we've got Walker back finally. So we've got that speed around the ruck. We've got that, you know, extra ball player. We've got that tackling machine, the energy. Josh Curran, you know, a lot of guys like him starting, but I really love his energy off the bench. I think he brings a lot. He gives you that cover there now that he's learned to play centre. Would never expected that, but he's done really well in the past couple of games when he's had to jump in there. So I love having his energy off that bench, 1-2 punch with Walker. Suriname, he's a guy who, again, has really started to perk my interest and my support over the past few weeks. I used to question him a little bit, but his dummy half plays definitely improved a lot. He's, you know, reduced his errors a bit. So I'm quite happy to have him there as a versatile cover off the bench instead of Lussick. And Tom Ali, he had that little bit of a plateau there for a few weeks. Had that big mistake against the Broncos, which some might argue, you know, cost us the game. I don't think it did, but since then, you know, he got dropped down, was meant to take the break, but ended up coming back in due to injury. In the past couple of games, I feel like he has sort of started to step up and have a little bit more impact again. So all in all, I'm going to say it, I think we win the bench battle due to our energy and a variety that we bring off the bench there. So, you know, how do you summarise it? Again, you can't just read the stats. If we play to our absolute best, if we play like we played against, you know, the Dolphins and the way we played against the Raiders in our last game, there's no reason we shouldn't win this on the back of our defence and our fitness and our lack of errors. Whereas the Dragons, you know, they score a lot of points, but they let a lot of points in. I don't think they're going to be able to score as easily against us as they have done against other teams. You know, they saw, when we saw them against the Rabbitohs, they put 36 on them to 30. You know, you can't maintain that kind of record and expect to be in the top 8. And granted, that was without Latrell and Cody, so that made a huge difference, I think, for Souths. You know, both of those guys' ability to get their teams up and coordinate the defence. If they were there, it probably would have been something like, you know, 45 to maybe 25 to South, I think. But, you know, they are going to have to play like they played in the Anzac Day game against the Roosters to really stretch us. But we shouldn't sit back there and assume that because they're so far down on the ladder and we're so far up that we're going to win. And I doubt very much whether Webby's going to let that happen. We came back slow after the last bye against Brisbane. We can't afford that. This is what we've had the break. We're refreshed. We've got guys back. You know, we're only a couple of players off our best team now. No excuses. I'd love to see us put another 30-point plus versus, you know, no more than 16 points against us to prove that we are a genuine top 8, potentially top 4 team. So I can't wait. Friday night game. There's nothing better than a weekend on the back of a Warriors win, and nothing worse than a week after a Friday night loss. I reckon we've got it. I can't wait to get back on there and watch the tally after that whole week of sitting there with nothing to talk about. Up the mighty Warriors. Good luck to the Blues tonight. They're my team, but I don't have a huge amount of faith in them, so I'm glad I got the Warriors this year. Let's go, the mighty NZ Warriors.